Hello there. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to ask a short favor. If you're interested in either of the two books that I have written and am about to release, head on over to my website at theanxioustruth.com/books. There you can learn about both books, one of which is free, and you can get on my mailing list to be notified when each book is released and how you can get it. I would really appreciate that. Okay, let's get rolling. There are two things you need in large doses if you're going to overcome anxiety, panic, or agoraphobia. One of them is motivation, and that comes from personal responsibility. Let's take some time to talk about that right now. Hello everyone, Drew here, that anxiety guy. Welcome to episode 2 of my anxiety, panic, and agoraphobia podcast. You know, when I boil it all down, there were really just two main guiding concepts that drove my progress and helped me go from anxious train wreck to living a pretty normal life. I've been debating on which of those to cover first, and I finally decided that it probably makes the most sense to start with the issue of motivation derived from personal responsibility. So in this episode, I'd like to go over that for a while. Two things before we start. First, I have to say that I'm not a medical doctor or a licensed therapist, and that this podcast is not meant as a substitute for qualified medical help. I'm only sharing what's worked for me with regard to overcoming some pretty serious anxiety, panic, and agoraphobia issues. Second, I'm going to warn you. This subject can and does ruffle a few feathers when I bring it up, but if you're going to make an omelet, you've got to break a few eggs, and sugarcoating things really doesn't help anyone. I believe very strongly that this is something we all have to address in order to start making forward progress, so I am going to address it. Hopefully you'll understand what I'm saying. Now, remember when you were a kid? Do you recall being afraid to go to bed because you were afraid of being in your bedroom? Maybe there was a monster in your closet or a ghost living under your bed, and hopefully your parents did the best to comfort and reassure you that you were safe, but no matter how afraid we were, ultimately our parents had to make us go to bed, because they knew that there really was no monster in the closet, no ghost under the bed. They knew that there was no real danger, and they understood that the only way for us to get past those irrational and baseless fears would be to learn this through experience. So now let's move ahead from childhood to adulthood. Visit any anxiety forum on the internet and you'll see any number of posts all telling this story. Spouses and parents and friends and employers are getting tired of hearing excuses, and patience is wearing thin. You know, excuses for not being able to go to the movies or out to dinner or to family functions or to work or to pick up your kids from school. Feeling isolated and often defensive, anxiety sufferers will take to the message boards, telling anyone who will listen about how people just don't understand. And of course, trying to be supportive, other forum members will chime in with sympathetic replies. It's true. No one understands. They don't know what it feels like. We need more awareness of mental health issues. You've heard all of those. And of course, there's always the obligatory, "it's okay" replies. Well, we all need support. And everyone means well, but the thing is, it's really not okay. There's a legitimate reason why the important people in our lives can lose patience with our anxiety issues. It's really well worth our time to take a step back, be objective, and look at that. Now, if an army of heavily armed men was lined up at your front door, waiting to open fire the minute you open the door, odds are no one would fault you for not wanting to go out. There'd be no argument from your husband or wife. Odds are they wouldn't want to go out either. If you're dealing with an anxiety disorder, panic disorder, or agoraphobia, however, there really is no army of heavily armed men, is there? Now, logically, you understand that there's nothing to fear, yet you recoil. You make excuses, you avoid, and you retreat. Just think about what you're retreating from. If you start with the premise that your fear is real, but that the danger is not, you would have to accept that you're only retreating from your anxiety symptoms. You're retreating from your own body and mind. You're doing your best to avoid anxiety and panic that can't actually hurt you and actually originates from within. So think about it. You're hiding, but no one else can see what you're hiding from, and even you would have to agree that there really is no danger lurking. Now, does that sound familiar? Your anxiety is the monster in your closet, the ghost living under your bed. Your family and your friends know this. They recognize this. They would like to make you go to bed to face the imaginary monsters and ghosts, but they can't. You're not a child. They're frustrated and they're out of patience. And now do you see why? Now, let me reinforce one thing here. I am not saying that your fear isn't real. It is. I know the fear, and I know that it's every bit as real as it would be if you were being held at gunpoint. Odds are your friends and family know that you're really afraid too. They just also know that there's actually nothing for you to fear, and deep down, I think you do too. Now, this all sounds pretty terrible, so here's where we take a negative and turn it into a positive. This is the part where personal responsibility and motivation kick in. My progress really started when I decided one day that the rest of the world was right. It really wasn't okay to live in fear of my anxiety, and when I accepted that I was responsible for fixing that. Nobody else, just me. Not a website, or a book, or a CD, or a pill, or anything but me. Just me. I was responsible, and it was my job to fix things because it's really not okay. I also made the choice to never seek sympathy, to only seek encouragement and inspiration, and to look at the normal people in my life as role models. Instead of feeling bad or angry that I couldn't do what they were doing, I chose to copy the behaviors they were showing me. It might sound silly to have to mimic my wife's routine trip to the supermarket, but that's exactly what I did. When I wanted to retreat and avoid, I would ask myself first, what would a normal person do? And I did that instead. For the most part, I did exactly the opposite of what I really wanted to do, and things began to change for the better because I accepted that it's really not okay. Now, don't get me wrong, I was pretty terrified, especially early on. Courage is the second of those two guiding principles that I mentioned earlier, and I needed a boatload of that to actually start doing the work once I resolved to do it. And we'll talk about that next time, but the thing I really want to get across in this episode is that before you can make any meaningful change, you have to change your mindset dramatically. Accept that it is really not okay because you can change things. This is not an incurable disease. Abandon self-pity. Decide that you are no longer a victim of circumstances that you can't control. Put yourself in the driver's seat. Understand that coddling and sympathy are hurting you, not helping you. Instead, look for support in the form of inspiration and motivation and encouragement. Seek people that will cheer you on and prop you up, not people that will simply tell you it's okay, because it's really not okay. Don't let your online support system become a shield against reality or a substitute for actually making changes. Seek no validation for your excuses. Welcome a kick in the pants when you start to slide back into old habits. Accept that you are responsible for you and that you can fix you. I'm going to keep making new podcast episodes. Next time, we're going to talk about the topic of courage, which, as I said, is number 2 ingredient in this recipe. We're going to talk about cognitive and exposure tools. We'll go over pitfalls and setbacks. We'll look at the successes of others. There's all kinds of good stuff coming down the road, but none of it matters until you've changed your outlook, so that's job 1. If I'm going to leave you with some homework to do, I would say this. Take a hard look at how you're approaching your anxiety. Are you seeking comfort or empowerment? Are you surrounding yourself with success stories or tales of woe? What does your support system look like? Is that support system inspiring you to make changes in your life, or is your support system simply telling you that it's okay when you know that it's really not okay? That's all for this time. I hope this has been helpful for you in some way. In the next episode, we are going to talk about a huge issue, that being courage, what it means, and how to use it. Until then, remember that every step forward is a good step forward, no matter how small, and I'll see you again soon. Hey, what's up, guys? Drew here. In the 5 years that I've done the podcast, I've never had a sponsor. But now it's time for me to put in a little plug for the day job, the business that I own. And that business is managed WordPress hosting. So if you have a website and it runs WordPress, and you'd like WordPress hosting that makes WordPress faster, more secure, and way easier than you ever imagined it would be, then check out Helix. You can find us online at iamhelix.com. That's iamhelix.com. We took a long time to build Helix. I'm super proud of it. It works spectacularly. We take really good care of our customers, and I promise we would take really good care of you too. So if you're in the market for WordPress hosting that will blow your mind, check out Helix. I would appreciate the consideration. I thank you for coming by and listening, and I'll see you the next time.